Okay, so I'm here with Mick Carter from C&I Machines, and he's going to answer some of the questions that the drivers have been asking me. It's Friday, the 31st of July, 2020. So thanks for doing this, Mick.
Mate, thanks for having me. Just to be clear, I work for Connect Source. I'm the Queensland agent for Connect Source. We're the #1 distributor for Seeing Machines. So I'm not a direct employee of Seeing Machines.
Okay, yeah. Well, there you go.
But thanks for having me, mate.
That's
I really
all right.
appreciate it.
Well, I mean, I was pushed into supporting you because I believe that the technology is going to save lives, and we need this data to show these politicians that we can save these drivers' lives. So can you explain for anyone that doesn't know what we're talking about, what the technology does?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, technology is Guardian by Seeing Machines. It's termed as a driver monitoring system. DMS is what they term it as. And ultimately what it does is manage and help manage driver fatigue and distraction. Two key-ish driver behavioural issues. It has a driver-facing camera and a forward-facing camera in the system. And the driver-facing camera is looking at your head position and whether your eyes and whether your eyelids are shut or not. It only activates and takes a video, and it only sounds alarms and alerts when there is an event. There's no way to dial into the camera. You can't do it. In fact, the camera switches off at low speeds, under 10 or 20 Ks. It just switches off because you don't need it there. So you can't dial in. It's not a privacy invasion. So when there's an event could be a fatigue event or a distraction event. If it's fatigue, it has about 1.5 seconds. It waits for your eyes to go down. If it goes down, it's going to vibrate the seat and alert some alarms to wake you up. If you're distracted, the general settings are around about 4 seconds. You can change those settings. If you are running a triple or something, you might want to look in your mirrors longer than that, so we can make them longer, like 6 or 7 seconds. But it's there to just let you know with a light alarm, just saying, hey, get your eyes back on the road. It's there to just guide the driver. I think you said it at the transport call. It's like a mate in the cab. And I don't know many drivers who don't want to know that they're driving with their eyes shut when they're doing 100 Ks in a prime mover. And the big thing here, and this is what we want to talk about today, is that some of the misconceptions around fatigue and that piece of information that the driver gets in real time about his fatigue position, which is you were just micro sleeping, is a really important piece of info. Because now you know now you know you are micro sleeping, you can do something about it. And that's probably one of the first misconceptions that we want to deal with. Is this idea that I'll pull over when I'm tired.
The challenge that I see ahead with the veterans is that they don't need this technology, a lot of them, because they've spent a lifetime tuning their own circadian rhythm and body to manage their own fatigue. So these veterans, it's not really designed for them, is it? It's for these new drivers that are learning to train to fatigue, aren't they? And learn the fatigue management. It's a tool to help that, isn't it?
Absolutely. You see, drivers, two-shifted trucks. One guy won't set the system off at all because he's just got the level of professionalism. As you say, he's got the right circadian rhythms. He can keep himself awake. He gets to bed. He's got the right sort of activities after hours. And you just sit, and the next guy gets in. He sets it off 16 or 20 times in his session. So certainly the newer guys and the younger kids, absolutely. They struggle and maybe they're not doing the things after hours that they could do, staying up a bit longer and later. So there it is to help you. But for a veteran, no. But I tell you what, if you did have that moment, and I've seen veteran guys who have said, I don't want this technology in my car, and they've come back 2 weeks later and said, do not in my truck, do not let me drive a truck without it 2 weeks later.
I think the challenge with any introduction of a new process or protocol, and especially workplace behaviour, is the hardest thing to change. Workplace health and safety. You can change the law quite fast, but you can't change workplace behaviour.
No, culture's a big one to shift. And that's part of, obviously, what we've got to talk about today, to get that level of understanding around fatigue. Because I was involved around the industry for 10 years when I was in telematics, and I've heard all the stories, some lucky, some frustrating, some sad, around fatigue. But once I became an agent for and part of the Seeing Machines network, I realised that we've now got objective data on fatigue which we've never had before. Because you ask a bloke, oh, what happened? He won't be able to tell you he was fatigued because he doesn't know he was.
That's right.
Right. So it's always been subjective. The subject. Now we've got this objective data. So every time a guy, he has that micro sleep. There's a video captured, and then they look at that video and they actually verify, yes, it's fatigue. So the data we're getting is 100% verifiable. That was fatigue.
Yeah. And these events, these are caused by the lack of resting areas and also the lack of sleeper berths for drivers, isn't it? If we had these infrastructure to back us up, we wouldn't have as many events, would we?
Look, I think so. I mean, the rest area conversation is really important. Rod Hannafay has been doing a great job making plenty of noise about that for a long time. Yeah.
But this technology is not a replacement for a parking bay or for sleep.
No.
This is a reform that if we introduce, it's a life-saving measure, I believe. But do you think that we need to legislate the protections for drivers, that they're not going to have the legal responsibility put back onto them and have to take out their own public liability insurance? Because that is the number one issue that drivers have approached me with, is they're afraid that this technology will be used against them to put insurance liability back onto them. And I'm not sure if there is cases or if there's cases pending. Can you shed any light onto that?
It's interesting, because, obviously NTI offer premium and policy benefits for people who put it in there, right? And they aren't using the data against the truckies. They're encouraging people to use it because they know it stops incidents and accidents. They've mathematically worked out there's going to be less payouts, because if you have this technology in there. I haven't seen an instance where it's been used against a driver. And the other thing too, I think is really key here, you're not doing anything wrong fatiguing.
Yeah.
It's just fatigue.
Well, under the National Heavy Vehicle Law, you are. Well, driving while fatigued is a $12,000 offence or a $16,000 offence. But the issue that I'm trying to get across, but the drivers that are listening, that are watching, is that they are concerned that in the future it will be used again. It will be used as a mitigation tool by the insurance industry or the insurance council to say, look, here's the driver. He's been warned. The machine has given him a warning, and he has continued. Now, we all know that there's a lack of facilities, so it leaves it in a area where the driver, as a responsible person, shouldn't drive whilst fatigued. The machine gives him an alert that he is breaking the law.
Yeah, well, I think that your point around rest area is really good. Right. I've been woken up, I'm in fatigue, but I can't pull over anymore. What do I do?
That's right.
And that is a real challenge. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And
the legislative protections that need to go along with this technology are just as important.
Yeah, absolutely. So we need to get that right. Yeah. I mean, I would suggest that if this machine has suggested a guy's fatigued and he doesn't have a rest stop, he's well within his right to say, "I'm doing the best I can. What do you want me to do?"
That's right.
I mean, I'm not trying to fatigue.
That's right.
I just happen to be tired because I had a bad night's sleep or whatever it is, and there's no rest stop for me. So please, and now we've got a system at least on the way to the next rest stop. At least it keeps reminding you, wake up, which is at least doing that. But is the guy doing anything wrong? No. And yes, the legislation needs to support that.
How many machines are currently operating across Australia?
Across Australia, I know we're coming up towards 1,000 in our agency. And I think Connect Source have come up to about 4,000 fitted out there. And I think Seeing Machines had direct relationships with some of the big players. Yep. I'm gonna take a bit of a stab at a guess and sort of say 7,500, 9,000. Okay. Out there, as a stab.
How many events do you capture in a 24-hour period across those?
Yeah, across the thing, I actually don't know that number. I don't know how many events get captured per day across those systems. There are 20,000 plus units globally, and I don't know what the total number is of events that are captured on every day.
Okay, well, that would be interesting to find out.
Actually, we are working, Connect Source is working on how we can get better value from the data that we've got across our customer base. Look at averages, look at trends, and there's actually some reporting getting done and put together on that as I understand right now.
Yeah, okay. So, as you've said, it doesn't capture you the whole time. It only captures you when you have a moment,
Yep.
and even then, it doesn't automatically record it. It's checked first before it goes to the employer. Is that how it works? So I'm driving along, I've had a noddy, the machine, then what? What does the machine do then? It shakes the seat
It shakes it
to
to-
wake me up.
yeah, sets the
You're
alarm.
asleep, okay, and there's a buzzer,
Yeah,
an
an
alarm,
alarm,
beep,
yep,
beep, beep,
yep.
okay, and then what does it do?
It captures a snippet of video, somewhere around sort of 8 seconds or so,
Okay, yep.
in and around that fatigue event. So you watch a guy go in and watch
Yep.
that, it'll capture that, and it sends it
Two.
to the Safeguard Guardian Centre. And
Okay.
there's one in Tucson, Arizona, and one in Canberra, so it can do the 24/7.
Oh, yeah.
And then they look at the video
In
they-
real time.
In real time.
Yeah.
So, and obviously we need
There's
network-
a time lag.
yeah, 2 to 5 minutes on average.
Oh, okay,
So it's quite quick.
Yeah.
And they look at the video and obviously we've got network coverage, so you need to be inside the phone coverage, right? And we do a lot in livestock, and a lot of those guys are on outside phone coverage, so they're only getting the alarms in the vehicle. They're not getting that second layer.
Yeah.
They look at the video. If they deem it to be true fatigue, they'll then contact the operations of the organisation and say, you've got a guy really struggling, you need to intervene now.
Oh, okay, so it's a two-step process.
Two-step intervention. There's some science on that, actually.
Yep.
If you just leave it to the in-cab alerts, you can reduce fatigue. And I had a quote at once around about 60%. But if you have the second layer, the science and the research done was that it showed that it would reduce fatigue events by over 90%.
What's the chances of getting hooked up to Starlink so that we can have it across the nation?
Yeah, across the thing. Difficult because of the data charges. That's what's going to be prohibitive because
Well,
the video.
get on to Elon Musk about it. And he's got it all. So
Yeah.
I mean, we can have every driver covered by these machines.
Perfect outcome.
Yep.
That'd be great because the places that you're talking about, that's where they probably need it the most.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
it's
right.
really remote and whatnot, and you know, it's all specifically. Can we send the video data by satellite? Yes, we can. It's just cost.
Yep. Yep.
You need a satellite modem, and you're going to pay a lot of money to send video over Iridium.
How much is a driver's life really worth?
Oh, absolutely. Well, and the transport operator is going to have that conversation.
Right. If you spread that across the entire nation's fleet, then it's going to lower the cost.
Yeah, well, Iridium charge for the network well, but it's a great network and it has what they call the best latency, so that's the time to get the data back. There are other SAT networks that can have long latencies, 2 to 3 hours, which case it's too long.
Yeah.
So the only one you could truly use that I know of, and in my limited knowledge, is this Iridium network because it's got low Earth orbit satellites, and the latency on that is only a few minutes, which means we can now get in and intervene in real time.
Yeah.
You're right about lives,
Yeah.
but there is a real cost to that. It's not inexpensive.
You're right. Everything costs money, and research and development and all these things. I mean, it's probably cost them millions.
Yep.
Probably we're unfathomable the work that's gone in behind the scenes to create this technology. Just writing the code alone would take an expert.
I mean,
many thousands of hours.
I've had it quoted as 30 years of research out of the Sleep Sciences Division of the Australian National University in Canberra. That's where this comes from. It's an Australian product going global. We can be very proud of what we've created with this product because it all over the world we save lives, not just here in Australia.
We need this. I believe that we need this machine to be able to trigger that when an event is triggered, that then allows the driver a right to pull up and have a sleep without fear or favour, or that their employer is going to chastise them or penalise them, or they're going to lose their employment. Because these drivers that do show due diligence and professionalism, once they've been alerted once, if they do go to sleep, that they are not contacted while they're sleeping and woken up, and that when they do wake up from a sleep, that they are not pressured and stressed by the receiving end. And so we need the operators, not the drivers, to understand that this trigger moment is not a moment to take it out on the driver. It's the moment where you support the driver. And so this is a tool that the operators, the owners can use to support their drivers and not to use as a weapon against them.
Oh, absolutely. And to be honest, across my customer base, that's the main I see. Owners act on the technology. I've never had a trial of the technology with a company not go to a full rollout and that's because they see what's happening in the cab and they go, God, we need that in every truck, And in the main, I see owners doing exactly what you're saying, hang on, righto, you're fatigued, pull up. I mean, they've got a truck at stake too, so they want that to save the asset, they want to save their safety record. They they want to save the driver's life as well. So there's plenty of things at stake.
That's right.
And most of the people that, the clients that I have, that's exactly how they use it. They say, buddy, you're tired, that's cool, it's all right, you're not doing anything wrong, you just happen to be tired, have a break now.
Yep.
And this is where this whole discussion around flexibility and fatigue comes in,
Yep.
We all know why they set the hours, because we had blokes going, 28 hours straight, right? But we didn't want that to happen. But inside those 12 and 14 hours, that's where the problem's always been, hasn't it? And it's been a bugbear, and I've heard so many transport operators talk about it. I mean, I'm not an expert in the fatigue laws. They're pretty complex. I have read them. I have a fair handle on them. It's probably not as complex as what some of the stuff in your book here, Steve. To be fair, when we talk about rates of pay.
Yep.
But this idea of what we can do during hours. I mean, the data we know is that if you've had a weekend off and then you jump in your truck and you're going to do your first route, that first hour or two is really risky. And yet we say to a driver, well, you've had a weekend off, and therefore you're fresh as a daisy. Why don't you drive for 5 hours? And in fact, if you don't do that, you're going to stuff your week, right? So the guys push themselves in what is the actually most dangerous part of the trip, where our data suggests that Seeing Machines, you should actually probably pull up after an hour, have a walk around, reset the load, get yourself going again, and then get going. And potentially, if you look at the metro cities, you actually want rest areas all dotted about an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours outside these metro centres, because we actually want to pull up there, have a break, get ourselves going again, and then go there and not be punished for that.
That's right. The accumulated sleep debt that drivers are accumulating through the week is not being recovered on the weekend.
No.
Because they're spending time with their kids, they're spending time with their wife, they're doing some home maintenance, they're going to the movies, and they're taking their missus to dinner one night a week. They're not recovering that sleep debt, and that is why these crashes are happening on outbound journeys, because they're trying to live two lives. And unfortunately, the Australian Trucking Association's come out with a thing saying that drivers need to tell their families that sleep at home is important, more important than them, and so people should be quiet and respectful while drivers recover from fatigue that they've accumulated on the road. Now, that's a very strange advertisement to put out, that drivers need to explain to their families that the job is more important. So the culture from these big boys, they don't understand what drivers are going through, do they? And they need to see these videos that the CNI machine is creating.
Absolutely. They've obviously never had kids. The people said that,
these people have never driven a truck.
Yeah, that's right.
And I mean, here's the thing about that I tried to get across last Friday, is that for a jag-off truckie like me to go up against $5 million a year barristers from Toll, I once asked the barrister from Toll if he'd ever driven a truck, and he turned around and said he'd never sat in a truck.
Yeah.
Now, that was my problem back then, and it's our problem right now, in that these people that create these laws and say, we don't want bunks the size of Americans, they don't drive the trucks. Yes, we do want bunks like Americans. Those peak bodies don't speak for me or any of the drivers that I speak to. So it's hard to get the infrastructure, but it looks like the Senate's going to embrace this technology. You can see by the receptiveness of the way they questioned me on whether I supported it. And then the media, the corporate media, have only reported that I supported the iMachine.
Yeah, you spent 30 minutes talking about rates of pay, and they picked out that bit,
That's right. Yeah. But that's where they've left me such a wide media lane to veer left and veer right and expose the whole corrupt thing, but also give me the opportunity to talk to you as well. So part of my conversations with you that's kept me so interested, not only this technology, is also your attitude towards driver welfare and the quality of sleep that we get. And you keep quoting this Matthew Walker that was on Joe Rogan, right? So explain to me, and you've got a passage that you want to read.
Absolutely.
So read it out, because it strikes to the heart of where we're going by using this technology for driver welfare outcomes.
Look, absolutely. I mean, you talked a bit about recuperating your sleep debt, right? You can't. Right, it's in here. You can't.
I'm going to be dead for about 8 years before I'll recover my accumulated sleep debt
that's
from
right.
20 years of trucking.
Yeah.
So keep going.
Well, you can't. You don't get your 7 to 9. There is no recouping the sleep yet. You can't do a few extra hours on a Saturday and Sunday to get it back. You don't.
Yeah.
And that's also a misconception. Oh, I'll sleep in a bit on the weekend. I'll be fine. It's not. Once you've done if you've only done 5 or 6 hours, and it's clear that you need 7 to 9 hours, the science on that is extraordinary. I recommend people read it if they personal health things. So
Take your time. Don't
here's
rush.
a guy, Professor Matthew Walker. He's the head of psychology at University of California and sleep science, Berkeley. This guy's a world expert, right?
Yeah.
So,
Joe Rogan had him on, and you should listen to
I
that conversation.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's just as good as the book for those people that aren't literate.
Yeah, absolutely. I recommend. I listen to the podcast as well. So he says right at the end of the book here, and right at the end of the book, if you don't read the whole book and don't want to be sort of let's say that he's got the science. There's 12 tips for what to do to improve your sleep at the back.
Right,
so don't read the whole book, just read the 12 tips. I'll start putting them out on my media channels.
All right, yep. Link will be in the description.
Yeah, absolutely. He starts this section right near the end. He talks about public policy and societal change. He said, at the highest levels, we need better public campaigns educating population about sleep. We spend a tiny fraction of our transportation safety budget warning people of the dangers of drowsy driving compared with the countless campaigns and awareness efforts regarding accidents linked to drugs or alcohol. This is despite the fact that drowsing is responsible for more accidents than either of these two issues and is more deadly. Governments could save hundreds of thousands of lives each year if they mobilised such a campaign. It would easily pay for itself based on the cost savings to the healthcare and emergency services bill that drowsy driving accidents impose. It would, of course, help lower healthcare and auto insurance rate and premiums for individuals. So there's a commercial outcome. This is the education, and what he says there actually marries up with the European Sleep Society, Sleep Research Society, who said there were 4 things we need to do about fatigue, and we need to and it said number 1, we've got to regulate the hours. In other words, let's not do too longer days, right? We get the regulation part, but what surprised me is they put the education, the re-education around fatigue above technology like seeing machines, like Guardian by Seeing Machines. The last one was biobehavioural, like coffee or have a walk or,
Wake up.
Yeah, exactly, right. That's the last one. But the second one was we've got to educate. And they actually spend this whole section talking about half the problem we've got with fatigue is people don't know it. Now, here it is. Yeah. It's written in a book, and he can quote thousands of studies are in there that have already been done, so it's not a secret that are there. They're very clear about fatigue and what we're doing. And here he is in the book actually attacking public policy and attacking the education of government. We do spend a lot of money talking about drugs and alcohol and speeding. What about fatigue?
Okay. Let's just. I'll just mention a couple of things there.
Yeah.
Now, the data around drug and alcohol use in trucks, especially when you look at things like Operation Rolling Thunder and stuff like that, where they did 5,000 drug tests across 24 hours to reveal 17 positive tests. That shows that the drug culture has been removed from the industry, and it's only the absolute minority that slip through because we don't have these drug and alcohol policies mandatory at companies. They're getting caught by the police on the road. Now, one of the most important things that everyone ignored, and I didn't bring up last Friday, was that 80% of these drivers are being killed by other motorists in these crazy manoeuvres that they're pulling and killing these drivers. So while having this for trucks is important, that we've got this data for when these guys die, because their estimated value of life for insurance is $4.97 million. So each driver's worth $5 million. How can we put this in every car so that car drivers are not, because car drivers have been completely ignored, and this inquiry has been the cause of 80% of these fatalities. So this is about saving the general public. Now, we can only protect the public from the machines that we drive. The public aren't protecting us from the machines they drive. How can we put this in every car?
It's a good point you make. We are fitting seeing machines into light vehicles, particularly for people who are doing work in remote areas. You go out, you do a long day in the hot sun, and then you jump back in your air-conditioned car and you're driving 2 hours back to your camp or to your... That's a really dangerous period of time. So this isn't just a truck driver thing. I mean, anyone doing that kind of work is going to struggle. And then, of course, to your point, one of the biggest issues is obviously mobile phone use. People on the text, and of course, if you are texting on the phone, the video does capture you because it knows you're not attention's on road, and so it would be a great way of stopping, people texting while they're driving, because there's 80% of your issues, and you can talk to road safety experts about that.
So what we've just uncovered is the ability to remove the use of mobile phones from cars.
Yeah.
By introducing this system into light vehicles and protecting truck drivers and lowering the fatality count.
Yeah, absolutely. You certainly could.
Well,
I mean, if you had it in there, it was going back to a central database that says if you're texting, we'll just send you a fine every time we see it.
Yeah.
In that central database, I think you'd close it down pretty quickly.
How much is it going to cost a year to run one of these machines?
So you pay for the hardware, and then you pay the monthly service fees so that they can monitor your videos, and you can get access to your own videos, so you can use it to educate the drivers and whatnot if you need to. So each unit's worth $2,000, and then $500 for the install at a base rate, and then you pay $65 per month per vehicle to access the system and to have the Safeguard Guardian Centre monitoring your videos for you.
And what is the discount on the insurance?
It's the
How
premium.
many years will it take to pay for itself?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. It is
Because it will pay for itself in the very first
absolutely.
crash.
I have seen.
But
some
how
good
many
stuff.
years? How many years do you think? A year, 2 years, and you're going to recover that cost and keep your drivers safe?
Look, some
It's going
guys
to pay for itself.
Well, there's a couple of ways, because there's two things. The insurer, NTI, offer policy benefits to guys who employees and drivers who put it in their trucks, and then they'll review your premium. Now, there's a lot behind the premium thing, because if you had a pretty good record, then it's hard to squeeze the premium anymore. If you had a pretty bad record, you can get some pretty significant improvements to your premium after showing a good year. And you're going to show a good year after you've got Guardian by Seeing machines in there.
Yeah.
So, I've heard of anything from 5 to 20 to 30% improvements in premium. That's pretty good bloody money.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then, with the policy benefits, if you've got Seeing machines in there, you get a $2,500 off your excess.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't have to be fatigue or incident related. You just don't pay that excess.
Yeah.
I've got clients who've actually saved excess, which is paying for the system.
Okay, so there's a benefit there immediately for any company to sign on, in that the initial cost is paid up front to your very first excess.
Yeah. All you need is one incident.
No,
and with NTI, you pay for the system.
You pay your excess up front.
Yep.
They put the camera in for free.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Wow.
Pay your incident, and then you've bought the first one. I know guys who've saved enough excess to pay for their entire systems.
Yeah. How many drivers would you estimate that this machine that you've had so far, how many drivers' lives have you saved with this technology? Hundreds?
Yeah, if not thousands.
Thousands?
And we're not talking about just drivers.
We're talking about the general public.
The public as well.
That's
yeah.
right.
That's right.
And this is about protecting the general public from us and protecting us from the general public.
Yeah. I've seen footage of guys, and they've struggled and haven't held the truck straight, and they started going across the line, and then the seat's gone, and if that seat didn't go, I wonder what would have happened to that passenger car.
We know.
Right? And the seat goes, he just rectifies before, and I think myself, I looked at that and I thought to myself, those people in that car would be dead if it wasn't for Seeing machines.
A lot of drivers have serious concerns because the industry has never given them a break.
Yeah.
Everything has always been punitive, and when they remove the safety orders and the Safety Act, they remove the safety protocols and doubled down on penalties. This is something different, and when you spoke to me, it wasn't a conversation where you were trying to sell me something. This was something that has changed the game for us and for me. It's going to make my job safer if it's implemented across. And Pauline Hanson said it has to be across the board for everyone. this technology can be put into passenger cars, no problem, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, I'm doing light vehicles today. So, there's no question. Across the board would be great, obviously, because we know we're protecting more and more people every day.
And if truck drivers can get involved and pressure to make it across the board, make it fair, just like Pauline Hanson said, then we're going to eliminate these problems and keep drivers safe, aren't we? By putting it back onto the general motorists, because truck drivers are so professional that only 12% of fatalities are their fault. So, and that is because of the pressures and the fatigue and all of the maintenance issues, the road issues, the weather issues, and all these X factors only add up to that small percentage. So to protect them, when is this in cars? I'm convinced that it has to be legislated.
People in cars experience fatigue and get distracted. So, there's no doubt that we can help all road users with this technology. There's no question. And as you say, Steve, I'm not here to sell you anything. What I wanted to talk about was that when I was talking to transport operators, I used to hear three things. My drivers pull over when they're tired. Yep. So now the misconception on that is extraordinary. You do not know when you move into level 3 fatigue, right? Level 3 fatigue is when you start to micro sleep. You don't know you're doing it. Yep. Even Senator Glenn Still said the other day at the Transport Inquiry, he said he drove 47 k's doing it through an area he wouldn't even know he'd done it.
He said that usually by this time in the afternoon he's nodding off.
That's right, and that's all that he was talking about. There is level 2 fatigue, right? Level 3 is actually when your eyes start to go down, and you see them battling and all the rest of it.
When you start hallucinating and the guideposts start looking like ghosts jumping out at you, all of those things,
Absolutely. Yeah. And so this idea that, I'll pull over when I'm tired, you don't know when you're tired. I mean, and so this is where it's very powerful, that if you're driving along and you get that info, now I know I can do something about it. Yeah. If I'm driving along with no seeing machines and not getting I can be doing that, coming good, doing that, coming good, doing that, coming good, until eventually I go that and I don't come back, right? And I'm off the road, right? Whereas if I'm doing that and they go, I was fatiguing, hey, now that's an important piece of info. And that misconception about, I'll pull over when I'm tired, the science is clear, you don't know you're doing it, you don't know you're doing it, and it's no one's fault, and we're not having a go at you, it's just that you don't know. So the second misconception, which is really key, that you hear a lot about, is that, we don't do long trips. They say, mate, we only do 3 or 4 hours, so we don't have a fatigue problem. Well, the highest spike in events we see is in the first part of the route. It's not a long trip thing. I mean, if you're going Port to Toowoomba, and Toowoomba back to Port, right? It's pretty boring stuff if you're doing it back and forth, right? And you're running containers, right? You're going to have as much fatigue, even though you've only got a 2-hour route there or a 3-hour route there, that you're going to have with someone who's going down to Sydney. Like, there's no difference there.
That's right.
And so this idea of, you've got to be driving a long time to have fatigue is ridiculous. We see events in 11 minutes. One of my clients told me that they had a driver going, in a light vehicle this is actually, had a driver going, in 11 minutes into his trip, he knew he had a full micro sleep. So you don't need to be driving for a long time to experience fatigue. And as you said, it gets cold outside, you turn the heater on, it gets even worse, sort of thing. And so that misconception around, you've got to be driving a long time to experience fatigue is wrong. It's really wrong. And anyone who's travelling anywhere probably over an hour needs to think about their position, a fatigue position. So that's the second one. And the third one is, fatigue's a nighttime thing. Like I don't drive at night, so my drivers don't drive at night, or we don't drive between 11 and 5 or whatever. So we're safe, right? You hear that. And to be honest, when I heard it, I thought, this makes sense. Yeah, good idea, beauty, right? And then here we are looking at the fatigue events that have been gathered all over the globe and verified by this thing. So this is not sort of like just, the system going, this is them looking and going, that's true fatigue, right? Of those events, across the 24-hour day, it's almost flat. You get as much as you get at 2 a.m. as you get at 6 a.m. In fact, the spikiest bit is probably in that early morning, as you get at 10 a.m., 2 p.m, 6 p.m, 9 p.m. In fact, the lowest moment across the data I saw was at 11, 12 at night. Maybe because there's less drivers on the road at that time, I understand that. But to say, fatigue's a nighttime thing, the data is unequivocally not telling you. I mean, if I have a bad night's sleep, right, I'm tired in a couple of hours, right? I'm driving along and if I'm really fresh, maybe I'm not tired until right at the end of the day. But you can't say that it's a nighttime thing. It's got nothing to do with that. Right. And then, obviously you compound some of these modern things that are going on, like mobile phones and LED lights and staying up late and, playing gaming and all that stuff, that you can happen to people. You can, that keep you awake. Stress, You know, family pressures, financial pressures.
Shit diet.
Absolutely. You know, this causes an enormous amount of stress, and that can impact on your fatigue. I mean, stress itself, I think, is probably the silent killer in society. You know, you get stressed enough, you'll get sick.
Mate, you don't get grey hair like this at my age for no reason. Well, so last week, I think that we had a bit of a win in that they seemed very interested that the drivers that I advocate for support the use of technology. And so with the other hearings coming up, I'm going to follow them around and try and get some behind the scenes stuff and all that stuff. So I don't have to talk again, which means I can go a bit rogue and a bit militant.
That'll suit you.
So we're going to make a bit of trouble and make a bit of noise, but I think that this is one of the top three things.
Yeah.
This, the parking bays and the sleepers, combined with the legislative protections that are going to eliminate these pressures of possibly having to take out our own public liability insurance. And I'm sure that some drivers probably will, just in case, because you don't want to lose your house and all that kind of stuff, which is what the drivers have been telling me. Oh, fuck, they're going to try and take my house. And we need to encourage more drivers that the implementation of technology is not going to leave them to the jail and to the bankruptcy court.
No, absolutely. I mean, I've got drivers who use the technology on themselves. They're a single owner of a driver. They've got sleep apnea.
And I'm just trying to break through that misconception.
Yeah.
Because I know, and you and I both know, that everyone doesn't have the time to read everything. They don't have the time to listen to everything. They hear one thing from their friend and they believe it as gospel, and then you try and show them the information and they say, fuck off, mate. I heard you're a dickhead from my mate who I trust, so...
End of story.
That's it.
Yeah. And that's actually a really good point. I mean, I've certainly seen some companies work really well to educate the drivers on the technology, and then you can see it being really well adopted because they understand it. Explaining what the alerts and the alarms are, explaining that if you decide to grab your phone and text down here, right, the system thinks your eyes are shut. Right, because that's what it says. So the camera's going, well, they're shut, and it's not going to second guess that because it thinks you're sleeping. It wakes you, and you go, oh, yeah, well, I'm only texting. Well, don't text in your lap, I think, is the answer.
That's right. Voice to text. Voice to text. Say, hey, Siri, can you send Michael Carter a text? Yeah, and she'll do it for you. You don't have to touch your phone.
It's so amazing you say that. Until I just started with Seeing Machines, I'd never use Siri.
Really?
And then I'd drive in the car and go, hey, Siri, ring this bloke. Hey, Siri, ring that bloke.
That's right.
Hey, Siri, send an email to this, get that.
Send a text.
And I mean, it was after Seeing Machines there, and I was a shocker at touching the phone. I was.
You can even say, hey Siri, direct me to this place or that place. And so drivers taking up the use of this technology through the phone, through the applications, through the logbook checker app, through Tone's app, with his maps and stuff and his bridge heights and his bridge weights and all of these specialised things that he captured that market, the whole lane. The industry left him that whole massive lane to himself to capture, and he's done very well. But this iMachine, I don't think there's a technology that can rival it. Can you?
I'm not aware of it, no. I mean, it's well tested, and I find the hardware really reliable and robust. Look, the number one issue is if a camera gets bumped, right, and it loses its position. That's the number one issue, because we've got to get it focused so that it can get into your face. So that's the number one issue we have with the technology is it gets bumped. Maybe someone lifted the bonnet and maintaining it, or someone throws something on the dash, or someone's not happy about it, right? We know, they go, oh, I'll just give that a nudge, and then it doesn't have to work for me. I mean, this education piece is really important because we had a driver in one of our fleets, not mine personally, but I heard this story where he had a micro sleep relatively early in the morning, started the trip out of Melbourne. He had a micro sleep. He looked at that camera and thought, I wasn't micro sleeping because he doesn't think he is. Like I've got drivers going, this thing's going off all the time. Then you sit down a video, oh, that was me sleeping. Yes, it's not broken. You were sleeping. And I hear that all the time. I'm like, oh, right. I go, right. I go send the video. That's why the video is really important. Yeah. Because if it's just the vibration, they'll think the damn thing's broken because they can't connect that they actually are sleeping because that's cognitively it's impossible.
Right. They're already having so much input from the truck.
Yeah.
They're driving at 100 kilometres an hour. They're moving up and down. There's 10 gauges that you're listening, you're smelling, you're looking out for people trying to kill you on
Yeah,
the road.
yeah.
This one last thing is the final barrier that we can protect these drivers.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've seen the most staunch guys against having seeing machines installed in their truck. Be offered a new truck without it. About 2 weeks later, they go, no, I want to drive with the seeing machines in it. These are the guys who have said, you put that in, I'm out of here, and I don't want that stuff. I've seen guys turn around, and come back 2 weeks later and say, I don't want a truck without it, thank you.
Yep.
And I was like, weren't you the guy that wanted to rip it out?
Yeah.
Weren't you the guy that hated it? And he's like, mate, you don't have to wake you up a couple of times where you think, you know what, that's handy, isn't it?
That's right.
As you said, a mate in the cab.
And look, drivers are begging for industry standards and conditions to raise. They will embrace any advancement because the standards are so low. The very first thing that they implement will be a huge advancement on conditions and standards for their work. It's amazing technology, and so thanks for giving me the time to talk about it.
No worries, mate.
You talk about my book now.
Yeah, talking about Transport Kuwait. Well, I'm getting all the way through this, and what I can see here is that you have tried very hard with a lot of passion, a lot of effort over a long time to improve this industry. And I was aware of the remuneration, Road Safety Remuneration Act, and I was aware of what it was trying to achieve, and that looked like good sense to me, because we squashed the rates so bloody low. How the hell can we be compliant? And the transport industry is the blood of this economy. I mean, it stops moving, this economy stops, mate, in on spot. Like, this is the insane thing. Everyone wants to be a hard time for the truckie, and yet if they're not moving gear, this place collapses.
The 23 million people on this island rely on the 208,000 of us.
Absolutely, and yet because you guys are vilified, you bad. Well, let's just stop moving for a week and see how you feel. To change the world, and that rates of pay thing. It's a complex discussion, and I see there's been a lot of people put time and effort and submissions into that, and it is a complex discussion. But there's no doubt that if we've got a scenario where the rates of pay are too low that I can't be compliant, that needs to be adjusted.
That's right.
And why not? Say to someone, the more you have compliance things like potentially garden by seeing machine, the more I'll pay you because you're safer. Why don't we encourage and incentivise? That sort of thing. But no, squash the pay, but I'll make you get the safety gear anyway. Yeah.
I don't have a law degree, I don't have a political science degree, I don't have a uni degree. And it's my right under the law to enact it in the way that I did by petitioning and applying to this tribunal. Now, with this inquiry, there's 103 submissions on the Senate website, and not all of them for truckies. There's lawyers and corporations and the College of Surgeons, and because surgeons meet a lot of truckies and truckies meet a lot of surgeons, unfortunately, and you can see why they wrote a submission to this inquiry. But I've been struggling to get drivers to write email submissions. It doesn't have to be a book, it can just be a paragraph. Now, on page 125 of my book is the list of supporting submissions from truck drivers that wrote submissions to support my application in the RSRT. Now, there's 35 written submissions from drivers, which is 30% of what's on the Senate inquiry website for the entire nation about this inquiry. So, statistically speaking, when you consider I had 30 people support my application, that was my second application. There was about the same amount of written submissions for my first application. So all up, there was about 70 written submissions in support of my applications because drivers actually supported these initiatives that I was trying to press forward. It wasn't just me randomly having an idea and deciding that everyone should do what I think. It was a structured thing where I talked to hundreds of drivers, and then when I did my petition, I went around Australia and spoke with 5,000 drivers, got them to sign my petition. And the truck drivers didn't come to me because they are so busy. I had to go to them explained what my petition was, asked them to sign it. First thing they would do would ask me, what is it about? And then they would tell me, you've got no fucking chance. You're dreaming.
Yeah.
But they would sign it anyway.
Yeah.
And so eventually it was tabled and I went to the Parliament. I actually went to Canberra for the tabling of it, to support the tabling of the petition, because we're in a litigious world. You follow the law. I live under the NHVR and all that, and which I found funny when she asked, people don't want to live under the thumb of legislation. Well, there's 4,600 pages of law when it comes to trucks, but 1 page of sleepers. So people are happy to live under that pile of law and also happy to work under 1 page of conditions. So it's about trying to get a little bit of a balance and write in a few protections along the way. So when I went for danger money with the stats, right, it's a no-brainer. How many have been killed?
Dangerous industry.
Now, we had 96 Australian soldiers killed in Afghanistan fighting the Taliban in total. And we've lost...
I didn't know it was that many actually, but yeah, right.
96.
But it's not, but compared to
less than 100. Yeah. Now, I've got mates that are servicemen, and I'm not taking away from it, because over there, what they've had to do, it's bad enough.
Absolutely. But
they are entitled to a danger money allowance of $200 a day, or it was $200 a day. The government dropped it down to $150. So at the time, I thought, I'll just ask for half, and they might give me $10. I'll be happy with $10 because then it would be something. We would be recognised as, these guys do a dangerous job, and $10 a week or $10 a day, just that little bit adds up to, over a year, you can buy your own income protection insurance or life insurance, or one of these things
or a seeing machines unit.
But to mitigate the fact that the death rate is 13 times the average.
Yeah.
They accumulate forestry, agriculture, commercial fishing and construction together, and they still don't make us up. You can add mining to that and they still don't make us up. So I thought I'd proved that it was dangerous enough that we were worth some kind of monetary allowance, but as you can see in the book, from these corporate lawyers that would disagree with every single thing, and they would want to exclude things. And I mean, I went in there to try and get some danger money. I've never owned a truck, I've never owned a business, I'm not a business person. I went in there blind to a meeting with 19 barristers across the other side of the table. And what was interesting, the attitude that they showed to us drivers in this Road Safety Remuneration Tribunal. Now, like Friday, I got a new suit, I had my briefcase.
Very good in that suit too.
I was the best dressed one looking there. But, so the very first time I ever walked into this tribunal, I had my new suit, my briefcase and all my stuff, and I walked into the room. There's a huge big conference table down the middle of the room where the president sits up one end and the barristers are on this side, and it went the TWU and their lawyer, then Jerry Brownstar, the owner driver, and then a couple of owner drivers that were supporting him, and then me. So I walked into this room and the president wasn't in the room yet. So the barristers, the corporate barristers, were in a huddle in the corner of the room. And I walk in and they see me and don't know me, who I am. And they all give me the nod like I'm one of them. I sit down at the table, get my paperwork out, because I'm thinking it's going to be about the applications.
Yeah.
So I'm taking notes, And the corporate barristers are having a conversation openly, speaking loudly, talking about my application and laughing, openly laughing and ridiculing it. I didn't say anything, and I just waited. And eventually the president of the tribunal came in, and of course it's like a courtroom, you stand up,
Your Honour.
she gives you that, and you sit down, and she says, I'll take appearances, as they do.
Yeah.
And I went down the line, Toll, Linfox, Coles, Woolworths, the Australian Federation of Employers, the Australian Industry Group, the Australian Retail Traders Industrial Organisation, the Chamber of Commerce, the Australian Business Lawyers. It was a wall of them.
The whole shebang, yeah.
And so it goes down that side, and then it goes down this side, and it gets to me, and I say, Stephen Corcoran, Your Honour, applicant 2013/5. And it was, at that moment you could tell, they knew they'd fucked. Being that I'm legally a novice, trying to adjust this legislation of trying to input this word instead of that word and this and that.
Yeah.
So what it did is they wasted all that time on purpose to deliberately drag it out to keep their business models operating. So I wrote to the tribunal president complaining in writing, as you do, that it was being abused, the process was being abused, and it was unfair to me as an applicant. And even though it was my right as an applicant to ask for a full bench hearing, and it's in there plenty of times that I've asked in writing and in person that my matter be listed separately, because I didn't want to be a part of the rates. Being a driver, I don't care if the rate's 1 cent or $1 million a kilometre.
Yeah.
I'm going to drive trucks whether it's they legislate 5 kilometres an hour for 5 minutes a day. I will do that. I'll work under the condition because that's what I want to do. But what they did is they made it so impossible to even get a word in. And to the point that my final strategy in these hearings and conferences and mentions was to not speak at all and to try and speak last. Because the president would go away and think about what I'd said. Now, when I would make my appearances, of course I'd lay the boot in and say, morning, Your Honour. Since we were here last time, when I said there was 47 guys killed, now there's 60 guys killed.
No one wants to hear that.
And it got to, that's right. And it got to the stage that the corporate barristers would be upset that I would be mentioning it, because I would shame them openly that they were completely wasting everyone's time.
Fighting to save lives, to against saving lives. Yeah, absolutely. And you brought the emotion and the reality of the whole thing to the room, not let's argue over what word.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And so it got to the point that I was able to school them in their own profession, in that in front of the Road Safety Remuneration Tribunal president, the barrister for Toll stood up in his seat. It was the first meeting of 2015, and we'd had about 17 guys killed between New Year and the meeting. And I was struggling with that information and how to deal with it and cope with it while they were doing all this. And so we go to the meeting, and it goes around the table, and it goes around the table, and it's finally my turn to talk. And I explained that it was so frustrating to me that these 17 guys have been killed since the start of the year, that they should all be ashamed of themselves. To which the toll barrister got up. Oh no, first of all he said, we sympathise with you, right? And he did the movement, the platitude, we sympathise with you, but these things take time, right? And so I said, don't sympathise with me, go and sympathise with them families, right? Well, that flicked his switch. And he got up, he went bright red, and he got up in his seat and he pointed at me across the table and he swore and he yelled and he goes, how dare you put this onto me? And so I sat back like this because the president was in shock that this
His reaction, yeah.
on millions of dollars a year has snapped at me mentioning the truth. And so then they had promised to provide operating costs for the model and for the calculator. 6 weeks had come and gone that they had said next week. 6 weeks in a row. And finally I lost my cool. And in front of the president I said, they're not going to supply their information. What are they doing here? They should leave. To which they were like, fine. Said, fuck you. And got up to leave. This is the Linfox barrister. And he got to the door before the president called him back and asked me if I would be gracious enough to let them return. In fairness.
Yeah.
So, because I wanted an outcome and I believed that I had just broke through that
The ceiling. Yeah.
but it turned out that they doubled down with more corporate barristers. In that, this is the thing that people don't understand. The 19 barristers that were there, while there's one for toll, there's one for the Australian Logistics Council, which is toll as well. So they actually had 2 barristers. And Linfox had their own, and the Australian Logistics Council barristers, so they had 2 barristers. So each of these corporations had 2 barristers. They didn't have just one. Now there was me, a jag-off truckie, right, that people fix on drugs and all this other thing. They think I've got problems and all that, and I do, don't worry, but not like that. But not like that.
Yeah.
And in the end, they had to repeal the act and double dissolve the government to absolve themselves of responsibility. So here we are, we're at this mess now. And I've exposed them in their inaction in that time. So I'm waiting for their industry stakeholders to come forward and see what happens. It's going to be really interesting, that side of it. But I know that going to these hearings, I'm going to ask them about this C&I machine technology, and I'm hoping that people will talk about it while I'm there.
Well, you certainly saw, Senator Glenn Stewart, Susan McDonald. She's aware of a company that uses it and endorses it. I mean, I've never seen a product, and we're talking about CNC machines again, Dave. I've never seen a product that's got in technology in my entire life that has academic, industry, insurance, and effectively, given the NHVR statement earlier this year, regulatory. In a way, they made a statement saying this is an industry accepted technology. I've never seen a technology that has all that support in place. And like you say, the thing we can do is potentially change these laws which aren't managing fatigue, they're managing hours. And we can, because and to be fair, there wasn't alternatives. We didn't have a technology. We've now got the technology.
It's not really a fatigue thing, and we all know that, and I pointed that out. The work diary has nothing to do with fatigue. It's got to do with enforcement of revenue.
Yeah.
But this is a game changer.
Because think about these terms too. What if I did not make it to my depot, my drop off, because there was roadworks or traffic, or I was closed at a border crossing because of COVID or something, right? So, you know, I don't get there, I run out, I'm an hour short, right? And I don't want the big fine, so I pull up, da-da-da. Now, commercially for a transport operator, that's a bad outcome. He's got to pay the guy in the sleeper.
Business, mate.
Absolutely, right? So we could be in a situation where we've got a technology which is truly assessing your fatigue position, not just an hour, or how many hours you've done. This is saying you're sitting there as you're fresh as your days, right? And the system's showing you haven't yawned, because if you yawn, you close your eyes, so it hasn't yawned, you haven't done anything right. Why can't we have a way that says, actually, get to the depot and go home? No, why can't we have that? Like, you know, and so that's great for the driver. That's great for the transport operator, because commercially it's great. He's not having to pull up a guy a few hours short, have his break, and then send him in there paving that. He gets here, go home, mate. So there's some really strong advantages in this. We're safer, and commercially it'll be more viable because we'll be able to. I mean, there'll be other times, again, like we've talked about, where we go out for an hour and we've got to have the break because I'm tired, and we've got to stop there. But then I should be able to, if I'm fresh then after a good break, why can't I go a bit longer if the system's saying you're going okay? I remember hearing a story, which I think is a classic part to this, is the owner was saying he had a new truck 2 weeks old, and he was running mangoes from Darwin to Brizzy. And the driver's pulled up 45 minutes short of a BP out in the middle of nowhere. I don't know where, but he's in the middle of nowhere. And because he's running hours, right? It's 46 degrees outside, right? And those sleepers are aircon, but they're not that good, you know, when it's that hot. You've got road trains going past you, right? But you have to have a rest. I'm 45 minutes from the air-conditioned cabin, from a decent feed, but no, have your rest, right? So he has his rest, doesn't get any rest, right? He wakes up, he's buggered. Because he doesn't feel like sleeping either. That's the other thing.
That's right.
So he's like, pull up, mate, have a sleep. You're meant to sleep now.
That's
mate.
right.
I'm not a robot, right?
Sleep,
Yeah, that's right. So he doesn't have a rest. He gets in the truck, he drives to the BP, he fuels up, he has a feed, and then he drives. 45 minutes later, the truck's flipped on its side, written off. Why? Because he's fatigued. Now, that law made him...
slowed him down.
Yeah, that's right. But that law, because we pulled him up, that caused the accident,
That's
the
right.
very thing it's trying to resolve.
The flexibility that they're talking about, and I don't mean, look, I explained about the whole revenue and how the book is designed to catch you out. It's not about fatigue at all. Because if it was, you'd be able to write, I'm not fatigued, I'm going to drive a little bit further. If you don't like it, then fucking sue me. But drivers aren't given that protections because all the protections were taken away. And also under section 570 of the Act, it's an offence not to answer questions. So you don't even have the right to remain silent anymore. But so while the legislative protections are in the bin, this technology protection is the only thing we've got. And so I'm all for it, and I'm going to push all the drivers to at least have a look at it. And now they can hear what you've said, and if there's any questions, they can shoot us an email.
Absolutely.
And you can answer comments in the question below. And
if they want more info, just go to www.beyondclarity.com.au. There's all the info on the website there, and if they want, you know, me to send some information or anything, they can come to there, and we'll be me and the team will be happy to help out.
All right. Well, this is the book that we were talking about, and this is the technology that's going to save these drivers coming into the industry, and also it's going to provide a level of protection to drivers that they've never had before, and that they can say, look, this is what's happening. We can show these senators the data, we can show them the videos. You've got probably thousands of videos.
Yeah, absolutely.
And is there any chance we can get hold of some of them to put a compilation
Yeah,
together?
there are some that we
Or
can
are they
send that have been.
copyrighted?
Under the GDPR rules, it is difficult. I'll go and ask, but there are some I understand that we can present that you can use.
Yeah.
I mean, you can actually see the technology on. There's a YouTube video of the driver where they interview the driver. You know, where it shows some of the videos in there. But I'll find a couple and get them through to you.
This is our own media channel. We don't want to just steal anyone else's bits. We'll get our own.
All right, mate.
Thanks a lot for that, and everyone.
Thanks very much for having me, mate. I really appreciate it.
All right, talk to you soon.
Good on you. Drive safe.
All right, bye.
Bye.